Hello, Graham Vincent, violin maker and musician, and
Hello, Thibaut Jaberg.
so it's Friday, and it's the end of the sort of third week, and it's the 31st of where are we?
January.
Yeah, I've been working with figures and numbers and dates all morning and afternoon, because it's the last day that we get in the UK to do our tax self-assessment. So my day has been involved in just looking at rows and rows of figures, basically. So the only person who's kind of been doing anything today is Thibaut.
Yes.
And with his
And yeah, I'm having great fun, I must say.
Now, yesterday you were saying you were going to do a scroll in a day, so that it had a sort of natural flow, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I am more or less on track. I've got, basically the fluting to finish around the back, or the sort of front face, and then peg box, and then a bit of chamfers and making things look pretty. But yeah, I think it's gonna be absolutely possible.
And I mean, you've seen me doing a couple of scrolls.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything fundamentally different from the way I do them?
So I've never sort of studied your scrolls for hours so far, but I think just looking at them, I think they're in general a bit more slender, I would say, than yours. At least, like you've been saying about the back, you sort of like to sort of keep it the same thickness for a long time and then sort of go in.
No, in practice, I'd say it probably looks about the same as yours.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, what you're describing is. I mean, I remember having that conversation basically where I was saying that Stradivarius tended to keep quite a wide peg box and then bring it in at the top, whereas some of the other makers of that period almost just followed the line of the neck through.
Yeah.
So that the top of the peg box was quite narrow, and I think mine is sort of a bit of a halfway house, which, in all honesty, probably is.
Yeah.
Looks about the same. Did you use
I used
the beer can?
Fantastic template. I have no idea. I'm not so much an expert in beer. I don't know if this is a recommendable brand or not.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it makes all the difference for the template. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, but I've been actually following this template pretty closely.
Okay.
And yeah. And sort of now with the fluting, I can imagine, I'm not sure if I've ever seen you do this technique where you carve the fluting, you sort of keep the end of the peg box here square, and you go with the fluting all the way out, you start
No, I
to
definitely
carve
don't
it
do it that
from
way.
the inside. And that's actually a very interesting detail, I find. I started doing this I think 2 instruments ago, so that's the third, I think, which I'm doing this way. And there are a few historic makers who did it that way. I think Matteo Goffriller, and probably also JB Guadagnini would have done it this way. And then when you sort of, in the end, do the rounding and the chamfer, then what you sort of end up with is a beautiful sort of little, like a little sort of roof shape,
A little lift up
thing.
to that. At the
Yeah.
end.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I look forward to seeing that.
And yes,
that looks really interesting.
It does look pretty cool, I find, for me personally, in the end.
That is fundamentally different to how I do it, because I mean, as you suggest, I normally carve this shape and then do the fluting.
Yeah. And I also did hear you talk about how you sort of find it takes a long time to do this detail,
indeed,
which no musician will ever care about.
Yeah.
One of those details which we only do for other makers to enjoy, basically.
It does feel like that.
And this is also a pretty cool detail, which people who know are going to look at it and he used that technique, because it's like sort of very obvious.
If this goes well, you may well see this on my next violin, I think.
So, and it does make it easier, I think, to sort of get that sort of end bit here sort of nice and clean.
That's really interesting. Okay. As I've been saying all along, I mean, Thibaut may be here as an intern, so to speak, but he's not here for me to teach him how to make violins. He's here to see how I make violins and then decide whether he likes any aspect of that or not. But I've been learning every bit as much from him as he has been from me, and I think you've just seen that in action.
Great.
Yeah, and also, I mean, tools-wise, I think you're using pretty much exactly the same range of tools that I do.
Yes, but they are quite different or fairly different for some compared to what I'm used to back in Briant. I would say you have a lot flatter gouges. For example, this one is almost completely flat. This is, I think, a number 2, so it's just one size up from the completely flat one.
Yeah.
And then you're using some very round and fairly narrow gouges, which are, I think I've got one gouge which is as narrow as this.
Yeah.
But otherwise, or maybe one which is narrower than this, but otherwise all the gouges I have at home are wider and rounder than those gouges.
When you say rounder, do you mean flatter than these, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, no, what I was saying is...
more of a curve, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, or more in between, I would say, like all the sizes in between. You sort of have the two extremes in terms of flatness and in terms of narrowness, which I don't have. So that makes a bit of a difference, and sort of I'm noticing that even without sort of really doing it on purpose, I'm getting sort of the same or similar tool marks than on your scrolls.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I must admit, I include those as a deliberate kind of feature because I quite like them.
They do look great.
Yeah. The one thing I do, which I don't know what your plan is with. Let's get this in the light. There we are. Is how you're going to what
finish the throat.
What you're going to finish here, that throat.
So basically, I like if they're not sort of too sort of not too simple, or I tend to sort of have a sort of quite complex curve which sort of changes shape, so not just having like one radius, so it sort of tends to sort of flow in quite a bit from the peg box, but then sort of go in sort of a bit abruptly, so sort of have like a curve that sort of tightens up towards the end. And as you did also mention, I try to also replicate this with the end of the end of
that's something I very much
windings.
Like doing. I think it really looks nice when you've got some, like those two echoed there.
I'm not sure. I am probably, once the throat is finished, I'm sort of gonna work on both here and here at the same time to sort of try and make them sort of work together.
So you probably won't be getting the peg box carved out today, will you?
I think. I don't know.
You're gonna have
what's the time now?
It's not late. I think it's just gone 4. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I generally don't need a huge amount of time for making peg boxes, so I'm probably gonna have a go.
Thibaut and I have been, for various reasons, studying sort of Vieux Paris school of sort of violin making, because the old violin that I've got, arguably the scroll and the body appear to be from different sources. I think
could well be.
I think you think that's possible as well, and certainly Ben Hebert was of that opinion. And the scroll, I mean, having not been very certain where it was from initially, we've kind of looked at quite a lot of images and so on, and it really looks like it's an early French scroll. And one of the lovely things about those is at the top of the mortise there, they often have a little shape carved in, which gives a little lift. So, having spent so much time looking at these scrolls over the last few days, have you got any thoughts on that? Are you going to go with just this sort of square top one?
The last, or the one before the last violin I made, I actually made sort of an inspired violin by Santo Serafin, or like inspired by his violins, and he used to do this this sort of round thing. Sort of, I don't know if that's going to show up on the camera. Sort of this sort of round. It's in French they call it chapelle. So like a chapel,
a little
like
sort of like a little notch.
Yeah. And that was something some Venetian makers did, but also the French. And I don't know, I like it. Although I also like this sort of curvy, pointy notch, which is in your
that's quite cute, that one, isn't it? Yeah.
So who knows?
I must admit, having had a look at those, all these different shapes, suddenly these square top kind of mortise, pegbox mortises look
Looks
very
a bit boring.
very boring, don't they?
Yeah.
Cheap and boring. So, okay.
Yes, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're probably, I suspect, going to be in and out the workshop over the weekend, but oops, where am I pointing this thing? There we are. Over the weekend, but probably won't be doing any videos, I wouldn't have thought. Much the same as last time. So all being well, you should see quite a considerable leap forward in what's on the bench in the next one. So in the meantime, I'll just leave you with where we are.
Yes.
And the body as a violin looking rather splendid. And the ones that I've been working on are indoors. But anyway. Cool. Right. Look after yourselves. Cheers, folks. Bye.
Bye.